I can interview the strange person with a hat on. Would you like to come up here? And I'm assuming that microphone right there is probably the perfect height for you, this one on the straight stand. And your name is?
I'm Sluefoot Sue, and I live in Texas. And back in the day, Pecos Bill and I were an item. Now, there was something I didn't know, though, about Pecos Bill, and that was I was not his only love. He had one other love, named a Widowmaker, and that was his horse. Now, it turns out that the story goes, anyway, that Pecos Bill's hanging by a water hole for about a week waiting for that wild white Mustang pony. And after another week after he mounted him, he rode him all over prairies, canyons, briar patches, everywhere. And finally, he got him to the point where it walked. And when he got him there, he decided to have a conversation with him. Like, he asked him to partner up with him on the IXL ranch. And the horse agreed, sadly, saying he was at least glad it was Pecos Bill, and for that he was honored. And Pecos Bill said, well, I myself am honored. And the pony had two conditions. One was that there would be no bit in his mouth, and two, that there would be no one on his back except Pecos Bill. Now, I didn't know all this. The way I come to meet up with Pecos Bill was Pecos Bill had bought a mountain from Paul Bunyan, and it was cone-shaped. And he bred a special steer that had two short legs and two long legs so they could stand upright as they went round and round that perpetual mountain called the Perpetual Motion Ranch. And they sampled every season of the year on that mountain. But it got to the point where Pecos Bill decided to sell it, and so he sold it to an English duke who happened to be my daddy. The Duke gave him all sorts of really nice things, fancy things, and that made the IXL cowboys laugh. But Pecos Bill was not laughing on account of he's looking at me, because he thought I was pretty. Well, I got into a cowboy outfit, cowgirl outfit, really quick, and I danced to jig to get along, little doggies. I learned things real quick, like you kind of wonder why I talk like this, coming from where I am. Well, the Brits and the Southerners and the Southwesterners, they talk pretty much the same in a lot of ways, and so I kind of picked it up real quick. So Pecos Bill decided to hang around the Perpetual Motion Ranch on account of me, and he wanted to teach me how to ride bronco. So he did, and I caught on to that real quick too. And after a while, I pretended to learn on account of, well, you got to keep your man feeling proud. Then I put on a show for him, and I hopped on a catfish, and I rode him clear down the Rio Grande River to the Gulf of Mexico bareback. Pecos Bill was pretty proud of that, too. Thought I learned it from him. My mama was not happy with Pecos Bill because she wanted me to marry up with an earl or a parliament member. Well, I, being headstrong, got my way, and she gave in. And she invited him to come to tea. Taught him how to balance a teacup, bow from the waist, eat scones and marmalade instead of beans and bacon. And she was so proud with her progress that she called him Colonel. Now, my daddy was really pleased because he was taking me out, and he gave Pecos Bill lots of fancy cowboy outfits. And the men at his ranch were saying, well, la-dee-da, dearie, ain't we fine today? Well, it wasn't that they were against me. It was, they liked my riding, my guitar, and my jig dancing. It just broke their heart to lose him to a woman or even for him to bring me home. But he asked me to marry up with him anyway, and I said, yes, before he could back out. My daddy asked for a duke from England to come and perform the wedding ceremony, and everybody at that processional was dressed up fine, while even Widowmaker was prancing and dancing around, and my mom and daddy were dressed up real fine, the Duke and the Duchess, and even the men, including Pecos Bill, had the best cowboy outfits, sombreros. Pecos Bill had divided up the men between the cowgirls, not the cowgirls, but the bridesmaids and the bridesmen, groomsmen. He wanted them to be bridesmaids, but they said that was going too far. But then I came along with my beautiful white satin dress and a white bustle on my back, which is made out of wire underneath. And all the men took their sombreros off their heads and placed them over their hearts. Pecos Bill lost his head looking at me. And he said he'd grant me any wish. Well, I got a devilish twinkle in my eye. And I said, I want to ride Widowmaker. He said, oh, no, 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 no. And my mama screamed and my pa looked pale as I bolted toward Widowmaker, and I put my little foot in the stirrup and I got on its back. And that horse, on account of them two conditions that I didn't know about, was really mad. He's snorting and he's pawing the dirt on the ground, and he's throwing up his back legs with me on his back, and then got up on his haunches, arching his back and shooting me way up above the clouds. There I was, and I could hear Pecos Bill beneath saying, catch her, and all the men got in a circle with a tarp in between them. I come bounding down, but I land on that wire bustle, and up I go into the sky again, down and up and down and up and down. I tell you, when I finally came down to earth to stay, it had been about a week. And I have to admit, I'd kind of fallen out of love with Pecos Bill, and I called that wedding off. Pecos Bill and his men went sadly back to the IXL ranch with their unhappy boss. He gathered them together and he said, well, he kind of had lost interest in cowpunching. He made an excuse that the farmers, the nesters he called them, were cutting up the land and making it hard. But they knew the real reason was I broke his heart. Still, he ended up selling his steer to Kansas City, dividing the cows and calves among his men. And then he mounted Widowmaker, and they both went off into the sunset. Nobody knew really what happened to them. Some even thought I'd changed my mind and taken him back. No way. I don't need that man in my life or his horse. Pecos Bill and his bouncing bride, as told by Sluefoot Sue.
Oh, that was great. I always love a good story. All right. I guess I'll talk a little bit more. All right, you go get your guitar.